from your listening device all the way into your agent's psyche. It's Real Estate Between the Lines with Brian Lee. Teaching you things you didn't know you needed to know to help you become a legendary agent and turn your clients into raving fans.
Welcome to Real Estate Between the Lines. I'm your host, Brian Lee. I'm all about helping the real estate industry improve one agent at a time. With me today are my beautiful people that are with me. Miss Cate, my lovely wife and business partner. Producer Christian, keeping us in line with this. Fantastic. Here we are.
Hello.
Hey, what's up? We have like...
Yeah, where do we look?
I'm going to really break it now. All right. Christian, you have to start over. I just ruined all the equipment. Sorry.
I think we're good.
We are on part 2 of Are the Appraisers the Devil? So last week we had part 1. Very excited to have that, talking about just some of the steps that you get into with the appraisers. Today is part 2, helping you understand how to write a better CMA, some things like that.
And again, I am here to represent all the angel agents.
So the weekly song,
my halo.
The weekly.
See, I got the gold earrings. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, just because you wear it doesn't make it so.
And Brian, you have the red camera here.
Yep, red.
Sticking on theme.
How about that? I do have the red camera.
And mine's silver, angelic.
Anyway, the song of the week, song of the podcast episode, again, very appropriately titled, The Devil Went Down to Georgia Looking for a Soul to Steal. Charlie Daniels Band. Man, that guy is still around, still rocking it. There's been a joke that's gone around that he's gone blind, I think, or something, even though he hasn't. Anyway, pretty sad
Really?
that that's what they said, but it's been...
He has the volunteer jam every year.
He does,
He's a big deal down in Nashville.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Did you read that on the internet?
Well, the internet, everything they say on it's true, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. So, also the internet told me that song came from the album Million Mile Reflections, released, oh my gosh, it was released in April of 1979. Holy crap, that thing's 41 years old now. Track 6, length is 3 minutes and 34 seconds. As a music lover, you have to get down on this thing. It has been used in so many movies and all that. You cannot keep your butt sat in a seat and listen to that song. You always have to get up and go.
It's a great song.
It really is.
Yeah. Can you name one other Charlie Daniels song?
So, agents play against...
Oh my gosh, Christian, you stumped him on music! Christian gets the... Would you like the halo?
I'm good. I'm
You stumped
keeping the horns.
him.
I do not know any Charlie Daniels song.
Do you know any, Christian?
In America.
In America?
Never
Yes.
did think that it ever would happen again. In America, did you? Remember that?
No.
Never did think that we'd ever get together
Out of
again.
disclosure, I we DJ'd on a top 40 radio station. I am not a country music singer. Well, I'm
No,
not
there
a
was
singer,
a pop.
but
It was on. It was his follow pit, and it was around the Reagan era.
Yeah.
When it was like the comeback of
Maybe
America.
if I
kind
heard
of.
it, can you sing it for? Can you go through?
Yeah.
We'll put it on the show notes and I'll listen to it there.
Yeah.
You don't want to listen to me sing it.
So, agents play a pretty good fiddle.
Fiddle?
Fiddle. You get that? Agents play a pretty
a
good
fun
fiddle,
word.
but give
Yeah,
the appraiser their due.
Yeah, appraiser.
Yeah.
Appraisers do.
I'll bet an appraisal of gold against your purchase price because I think I'm better than you.
What?
That's the best thing I could come up with.
At valuation.
At valuation, I'll say.
Evaluation.
I was trying to keep
Maybe
that
we'll
part
give
out of
you
it.
that. Maybe.
So again, we're in this 3-part series trying to help you understand the appraisal process. Last week, we talked about helpful tips in working with the appraiser, some of the rules, some of the guidelines, when you can talk to the appraiser, some suggestions on how to do that. Today, we talk about how to actually write a better CMA and to understand a little bit more about the appraiser's valuation brain. Part 2 gets into steps how to create a CMA. So here are some of the things that you want to consider when you're going through this. So the main steps we get into when you're writing a CMA is your comp selection, making sure, looking at what comps you want to select, grading those comparables, making adjustments, and ultimately reconciling that. So that's what we're going to get into today for that.
And a CMA, as I like to remind everyone, is a comparative market analysis.
It's not a competitive market analysis.
No. Some
Wow.
people say that. Some people have no clue what it means.
What's that?
What does CMA mean?
Country Music Awards. That's what I always thought it was.
Isn't there
association?
Isn't there a TV station? Isn't there the CMA show or
yeah,
TV?
Yeah, there's CMA.
Something? I don't know. Yeah.
Well, there's a Country Music Awards. It's CMT.
CMT.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
CMA is Country
But
Music
some
Association.
people, most clients don't know what that means. So I think it's important for an agent to understand what that means.
Comparative market analysis. That's what you called it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Not an appraisal. How about that?
Yeah, well, definitely it's not an appraisal. You have to actually be
You may
quoted
get
by
into
an
this
appraisal.
later, but how much of a CMA is the value? Like what percentage is it
What do you mean by that?
account for? Like if you only had a CMA, how close would you be to your appraisal value?
In an ideal world, it should be identical.
It should
be identical. It should be the same. So it's
It seems to me like it's most of it.
It should be the majority, but in my opinion, my analysis or my viewpoint of it is that an agent takes a CMA, an agent puts together a CMA, but we also look at actives and how we're going to position ourselves, pricing ourselves. If we put ourselves on the market today, what are we up against? So we may adjust here 1,000 here or there based upon our competition, and an appraiser won't necessarily.
Well,
the joke is always you get back the 50-page inspection report, for example, in an inspection when they do evaluation in there too, and it basically there's a bunch of CMAs, and that's what the value is, regardless of how many outlets don't work. Do you know what I mean? It's almost like why'd we do the rest?
Mm-hmm.
Well, and it's a good question, and another way that I like to look at a CMA and an appraisal is that a CMA is, and I hate to use the term rudimentary, but it's just not as detailed. Kind of as you just indicated, from the standpoint of the appraisal gets into a lot of detail analysis. Yeah. There's a lot of things that we have to report.
But does it matter? Is I guess what I'm asking. I don't want to get us off on a tangent. I'm just trying to figure out, like on CMA, you hear it bandied around a lot as sort of the thing that determines value, and for the most part. And is it mostly that, or are there many other factors?
No, again, a CMA really doesn't have a lot of regulation to it at all. It's just, again, a CMA is
more of an
across
agent's
the board.
opinion.
It's just more than that. It's how you write it up. I know, Cate, that you've been being associated with me and an awesome appraiser. You write a fantastic CMA. Not every agent
even
does.
Before I met you, I did. Thank you.
Well, that's left for
honey
debate.
and vinegar.
Okay, so anyway, just there are variations of CMAs. Yeah. There's some that are again very rudimentary, one-page type documents that have a number. True. You have an appraisal that's 30, 40 pages long. That's a number. You have a report that Cate would write that might be somewhere in the middle of that, maybe more toward the appraisal side. Anyway, the level of detail can change, and sometimes those details that get missed on the CMA might become apparent in an appraisal. So starting off on this, talking about writing your CMAs, is that it probably should look more like an appraisal. Again, not maybe the depth. You're not a licensed appraiser. You don't have that capacity, but there's still some of the steps that you can take. And understanding that part of what the appraiser does is that we have to answer to that lender. We have their underwriting overlays. They have their guidelines that we have. And so with that, we may not always choose the same comparables. That writing up the CMA, that an agent, again, there's very little regulation for you. There's no overarching licensing authority or, appraisal qualification board, USPAP rules, things like that appraisers have that agents don't. So you might pull comparables. You might do anything. And again, there's nobody that's really pushing you and saying you can't do that or that we don't like that, whereas appraisers, we do. So an example that I like to use all the time is that I might have a ranch home that I'm trying to appraise, and I'm looking for ranch homes, and I don't have one that's in close proximity, but I find a good ranch home that's, maybe a mile and a half away, sold 9 months ago. And that would be a great comp. It's very similar in size, quality, and everything like that. But the underwriter wouldn't like it necessarily. One, because it might be a little bit farther away than their taste would prefer. It might be a little bit of an older sale. So what they'll come back and say quite often is that there's a 2-story comp that sold next door. And it sold just last week. It's close proximity. We'd rather you use that. And we get that kind of pushback quite often as the appraiser. So some of the times when we're writing the appraisal, we'll do things that I like to say are in fantasy land. And it's not that it's fantasy land, it's that I'm making that underwriter happy. So I would probably agree with you that 2-story home is not a good comparable, but if I don't provide it, the lender's going to push back and say, we need it, we want it because of its closeness, because of how recent it sold. And so that gets to be very frustrating for agents and quite honestly for appraisers too. But just understanding that we are trying to find properties that are similar, not properties that hit a number or get what you want, but homes that are similar to each other.
And that can appease the underwriter. So to us agents from the outside, it does not make sense that you would use a 2-story comp, even though it was right next door. And there's a great one a mile and a half away. But like you said, you have to keep the underwriter happy. And unfortunately, that means you may have to use that.
Absolutely. And again, that's just, it's pulling those comparables that sell that report. In looking for comparables, we are starting with major variables such as square footage, bedroom count. We do want to try to stay with the same design, ranches to ranches, bi-levels to bi-levels, 2 stories, etc. But again, we can find some variations there. Acreage are a big deal. So look for those main pieces, but realize that you're not always going to find that, and especially on difficult properties. And so one of the concepts I work through a lot in my workshops and the CMA classes that I teach is that when you're looking for comparables, obviously the best situation is to find homes that are just like yours. You have a 1,500 square foot ranch home, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage. If I have those comps all day long, that's my search. Easy peasy, I'm done for the most part. What happens if you have a really complicated property, or maybe it's not even that a complicated property, but you don't have a lot of comparable data? So the concept that I work off is find properties that set ceilings and floors for yourself. And what I mean by that is that you may not have an ideal comp. You may not have one that's exactly like yours, but you have one that's better, that you feel very strongly that it's better, that it's larger in size. It's a 4-bedroom home instead of 3. It has a 3-car garage instead of a 2. It has a basement where yours doesn't. Something that says that this comp sold, it's not exactly like mine, but it sets a high number. So let's say that comp is $200,000. I know that my property is not worth more than this. That sets my ceiling. I'm not saying that it's a good comp, but at least it sets that high number. Now I'm going to look for the floor. I'm going to look for the bottom side of this to say, I'm going to look for a comparable that is, again, not like mine, but it's less quality. So again, maybe it's a smaller home. It has less bedrooms, less garage, whatever it is, that I can legitimately say that my home is worth more than that one. So now I have this range. And let's say that low one is 150. So the low one sets my floor at 150. The high one sets my ceiling at 200. So at least I have a range to work in. Again, it's a wide range, but at least it works through that. So now I'm filling in the gaps, and this is where I start to search for my comparables too, to kind of figure out, okay, maybe I can find other properties that have other similar pieces that would help me further define that 150 to 200 range.
Yeah, and as a newer agent, I would suggest that this is a great way to start when you're practicing doing CMAs, is to find floors and ceilings in neighborhoods, and that will help you kind of narrow in. It's starting there and then kind of bringing it down makes it so much easier. It's also helpful when you're presenting this to a seller that maybe thinks, oh, the highest priced home in the neighborhood is $200,000, but my home is worth $300,000. It's going to be really tough to sell that to an appraiser and an underwriter when the next closest home in the neighborhood is $100,000 less than you. Mm-hmm. So hopefully by putting this in numbers straight in front of their face, it's easier for them to swallow this.
Absolutely. And again, that's a great point, is again, just helping people understand, and also helping to sell this thing is to find those things. Searching for comps is tough anyway. I mean, I know you as agents, I'm sure you've worked through multiple situations, comp selection is tough. So finding those properties that at least help you set a parameter. It may not be the silver bullet, but it helps you through that. Also consider using pending, active, and expired listings. Again, it's not that they're great comparables because they haven't sold, but at least they tell me something. At least they give me some indication. They help me to further refine what I'm trying to get to. Again, not ideal, but still getting through that thing. So just considering that.
I like it. Well, take a quick little break for my side note tangent.
Of course.
We're picking up speed. Things are going to be great. Wait.
Side note tangent.
It's a side note tangent with Cate.
You mentioned earlier the devil went down to Georgia and he plays a fiddle, right? Did you happen to know that fiddles, a.k.a. violins, they appeared about 1,100 years ago? Do you know that's how old they are?
I did not, and I didn't know that there was. I thought there was a difference between a fiddle and a violin. Are they not the same?
They are no. So a violin is a type of fiddle. A fiddle is actually a stringed instrument that you play with a bow. So there are different variations.
How about that?
But a fiddle is kind of a casual term. A violin is a specific type. But yes, and it got me looking. I was curious. I dive into stuff sometimes and can't get away from it, of course. So, but historically, a fiddle it plays music that's more for dancing, and a violin is more kind of classical symphony kind of music. And so growing up, I did not learn to play either because I would not be good with a stringed instrument. But I did learn piano and clarinet. But I'm curious, did you guys learn an instrument growing up?
I played bass, but not when I was growing up. I played it when I was
Bass
an
guitar,
adult.
not the
Bass
tall
guitar.
bass.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. Yeah,
That would be cool, though.
Boom, 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 boom.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So I did that, kind of self-taught. I had a friend that helped me with it, but that was my instrument, if you will.
I started playing drums when I was 8, so I played drums my whole life. Yeah, my parents were singers, country music singers, actually.
Really?
Yeah,
They have the hi-hat and the cymbals and
I had the whole
the
thing.
crashing.
My
of the
brother
snare drum.
played, and he wouldn't. Of course, he wouldn't let me touch his drum set because he was 9 years older.
Is
it
this
like-
like a
like
Step Brothers
Step Brothers?
thing?
Yeah, it is
You
exactly.
moved my cymbal.
He would know.
Where he had his fingers
Yeah.
up
My
there and he's
hi-hat.
measuring.
No, he would do that. He would know. He would know if it wasn't. So he set me up some paint cans. I played those for about a year.
Oh, my God. With your hands, or did you use sticks?
I used sticks. He gave me his old broken sticks. And then when I was 8, they finally let me play. So then we had 2 drum sets in the house. My poor mother
Oh, gosh.
would let us go for about an hour, and then she'd flick the basement like you gotta quit now.
Go
Turn it off.
Exactly.
She needs some earplugs.
But they were musicians. So we always played around Indianapolis, and
How about
they
that?
they were
cool.
they were in the house band at the Little Nashville Opry, which
What was their band?
they were in the house band.
Okay,
so they
just
opened up
for
for
the-
people that didn't have bands. So
Yes.
if country music artists would come through and they didn't have a band, my parents would play with them. And then if not, they just opened the show for them. So
That is so
yeah, it was neat. It was a
cool.
pretty cool way to grow up. I thought everybody kind of grew up that way.
How about
yeah.
that?
Like
Yeah.
it didn't really occur to me it was unusual. I met all these people. I mean, I got my autograph book in there actually.
Nice. That is
Dolly
cool.
Parton and Loretta Lynn.
Oh, wow,
Kenny
that's
Rogers.
cool.
And,
Yeah.
all the classic country stuff.
yeah.
I love.
the
I love all that
bluegrass
stuff.
and all that. Yeah.
Did Super
yeah.
B sign your autograph book
I
the
have
other
to I
day
have to
when
get
he
him.
was
Yeah,
here?
I didn't get him because I was afraid he would.
Yeah, you asked him for tickets,
I
but
didn't even get to meet him. I mean, at least you guys got to meet him.
it's true.
Yeah, I did
know.
ask for tickets, didn't I?
Yes, you did.
Probably bad form.
I can't wait to hear that story.
So
yeah,
what
you
else?
weren't here for all that. So.
I missed
Exactly.
all of that
All of
I was
it.
conversation.
asking for
I have
tickets
no idea.
to Universal, I think, for the
yeah.
Spider-Man ride.
Spider-Man,
Yeah,
exactly.
apparently he's
yeah,
friends with
yeah.
Spider-Man. But
That's-
not that
guess.
good of friends.
There's
Yeah.
like some superhero convention or
Maybe
something
that's
like that.
why he
or-
rushed out of here. He didn't want to have to give you
Maybe.
tickets.
Yeah. Or where do you put him in the tights anyway?
Well, I don't know.
So next step we're going to get
ticket,
into
citizen.
here.
Oh goodness.
Do you have a pencil?
Are we still on side note tangent?
No. Let's get, all right. So what are we working on? A CMA?
Next step. So we've pulled comparables. We've
Properly
looked for
grid comparables.
Yes.
So we've had our floors and our ceilings. We have some comps that kind of help put this in check with
Okay.
each other.
Okay.
Now we want to put it on a grid, guys. This is something that so many agents drop the ball on. They don't do a good job of this. And again, I'm not trying to be hypercritical, but one of the things that gets to be such a difference here is that agents will pull comparables and they'll show them to me, but after I put them on a grid, it does not help their number. So, for example, I can't tell you how many times that an agent will be disappointed in my number. Let's say if they sold their home for $200,000 and I appraised it at 190, so I came in at the dreaded low appraisal, whatever. Anyway. Come at the $190,000 number. Will they give me some comparables? Say, Brian, these are the comparables I used, and I put them on a grid, and I adjust for all the differences, and guess what it shows?
190.
190, because Brian is right every single time. No, I mean, it just...
You're right, B.
Having it on that grid really helps you to see this. So it breaks down all the elements of comparison. It breaks down the concessions, the location, the view, the design, the quality, condition, room count. It breaks all these things down instead of just having one or two main parts where you're just looking at square footage or room count or just the main pieces. Break the thing down. In fact, what I have, if anybody's interested in this, I have an Excel spreadsheet of a document that I'm happy to email to anybody out there that wants it, of a great grid that you can use. You can use it in Excel.
Sounds like bonus content.
It does. That's something that exactly we're going to get into is to kind of work through that. But it helps you to break the pieces down, let you see the differences, so that way you are actually making the changes in here or adjusting for all the differences there. The next thing we want to get into then is that now that we have it on now we have the comparables on the grid, is to apply the adjustments. Out of all the things that we're worried about, though, adjustments seem to be the top one the agents are most concerned about. Is what is a fireplace worth, a garage, a bedroom, and all that. Most of the time, the adjustment's going to be the last thing that you need to worry about, though. It's more important to have comparables that really support your number, to have them gridded so that way you're seeing the differences, and then the adjustments probably won't make that big of a difference. I'm not saying that it never does, but it's the one thing that is going to be the hardest for you to argue for or against, or to make any kind of legitimate claim. It's so much easier to talk about comparables and, hey, you didn't notice that I had a finished basement. You didn't even account for it. I'm not talking about the adjustment. Is it worth $5,000, $10,000? I'm saying, did you even notice that I had the finished basement? Because I don't see it in your grid. And so that's a big issue.
Yeah. And I would say starting out, again, an easy way, because I agree. I find that it's difficult to say, how much is a fireplace worth on a home of this value in this particular neighborhood? It's going to be different in different areas, different neighborhoods, all that. So instead, if you start off just kind of baby steps, start with this grid and just do pros and cons, or a plus or a minus. Like, okay, my property has a fireplace. This other one does not. So the other property maybe would get a negative, or mine gets a positive, but kind of doing pros and cons on each one, not dollar amount values, but just kind of showing back and forth of what one has more higher end amenities or whatever it may be. So
absolutely. And what you're talking about is a great tangent, or a great segue, if you will, into what we call qualitative adjusting. That's where it's going to be so much easier for you to make your adjustments, is to just recognize, one, that there's a difference, and then two, to determine, is it better or worse, or maybe it's the same, maybe it's neutral. So looking at those, identifying the number to say a fireplace is 1,000 or 2,000, whatever, it's just going to be so difficult. And quite frankly, you're just not going to do a great job of it. Even appraisers don't do a great job of it. It's noticing the differences.
In your report, typically the subject property, you don't make changes on the subject property itself, correct? It's always on the comparables?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So we'll actually have a breakout video where we talk more about making those adjustments, putting it on the grid, what a qualitative versus quantitative adjustment. We'll talk about an acronym. How about this for foreshadowing as a little way of pulling you back in? The acronym CIA and CBS. I'm not going to tell you what they are right now. Stay tuned. Look for the breakout video, and I'll tell you all about CIA and CBS. The last thing that we want to do here, so we have pulled comparables. We have gridded those comparables. We have adjusted those comparables. The last thing, again, another piece that you will do so much better on your CMAs on and helping with appraisal, is to reconcile that. And what that means is that you explain what you did. Just saying, hey, here's some comparables. That doesn't help me. Tell me something about them. Why do you like your comparables? Well, I like this comparable because it was close in proximity, because it had a similar basement to mine. It had the pool like mine does. The fence, it had the nice yard like mine did. Explain why you like your comps. Not just say, here are the comps that I used. Why did you pick them? The appraiser has to. When we write our reports, we say that comp one was picked because it shows the square footage. This one was picked because of the garage. This one was picked because of the lot size. Why did you choose those comps? Why did you adjust for those things? Explain what you did. What is your rationale behind all this? And
especially the things that maybe the appraiser may not be aware of or may not know. So if maybe the next door neighbor's home had a flooded basement, but it did not show that on the MLS or on your system, put that in an explanation so that the appraiser is aware of that. Absolutely,
and that's a great point. Is that this is even an opportunity for you to address things like that. I had an appraisal a year or so ago where there was a great comp across the street from the subject property. Fantastic comp from the standpoint of square footage and all the numbers. But the home was a divorce situation, one, but two, the condition of the property was very, very poor, and none of that was apparent in any MLS pictures, in any of the description. So that property brought everybody else down. Once I was made aware of it, it helped the situation a lot. But on paper, without knowing that, it really affected the numbers. So that can also be part of your explanation, that I don't like to comp across the street because of that condition issue or whatever like that. So don't just expect somebody to blindly agree with you.
Yeah. So overall, don't forget, appraisers are human.
Yes,
Sorry,
we are.
but they are.
Yes, we are.
And they have to follow certain guidelines that, maybe we don't make up. So making sure you have a better understanding of these guidelines can help you appropriately price your homes up front and communicate with your client to set those expectations. And ideally, we want to make it as easy as we can for the appraisers to do his or her job. So the more data we can offer them, the easier it is for them to do their job, the higher the likelihood we'll all come together and sing Kumbaya together.
That's right. That's right. Because that's what we're all working toward. Okay. The podcast quote for the podcast is simply that value what you bring to the table. It may not be everything, but your anything is better than other people's nothing. Agents, do not let your lack of knowledge keep you from being legendary. We all started somewhere. Go out and show your value. Show that you have something. Don't just expect people to blindly believe you. Don't just say, here's some information without qualifying it. Reconcile what you're doing. Bring value to the table. Bring that information. Help the situation. Again, appraisers, for the most part, are not here to kill your deals. We just want information. If you've got it, you can bring that value to the table. And bringing the value, you're bringing it tangibly and also metaphorically. You're helping your clients and through that situation. So in closing, again, focus on your comparable selection, looking for your floors and your ceilings, properly grade your comparables, prove to yourself that your value is there. Adjustments are there. You need to apply them, but know that they're not going to help you in most situations, that it's a number that you're picking and it's not going to be the be all end all. And lastly, reconcile. Explain what you did. Doing that pays so many dividends, helps you to validate your argument, helps you to work through and say, here's why I think what it is. So that's kind of the focus on the day. So episode 3 or part 3 will be released next week on how to prepare your appraisal and more successfully challenge an appraisal. So that's it for today, guys. Hope you enjoyed the episode, picked up a couple of things here and there. We love your feedback. We welcome your questions. If you want to hear from the devil, talk to me. You can find me at brianclee.com because the devil was with Brian and they both went down to Georgia. Thank you for joining us today. Take care and make your day legendary.
You've been listening to Real Estate Between the Lines with Brian Lee. If you'd like to learn more about becoming a legendary agent, be sure to visit us at brianclee.com and sign up to hear about upcoming workshops and events. Now go out there and turn your clients into raving fans.